Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ted Gardner, and I'm an interviewer for the Library of Congress Oral History Project, which is so capably handled here by our Public Library of Cincinnati and the History Department, and Dennis Daly, our great historian here and videographer. And today we're doing something a little different. We've been doing World War II interviews for years now, and now we're getting into that Korea period as well. And we're very honored and fortunate to have with us a gentleman who I've met before, Bob McGeorge from White Oak, Cincinnati. And he's a Korea veteran, and he's going to tell his story here today. Where were you born, Bob?
I was born in Cincinnati, Ohio.
Okay, where'd you go to?
I went to
elementary?
St. Bonaventure in Fairmount. And I went to Roger Bacon High School.
Okay.
And right after I graduated, the Korean War started.
And there you were.
And there I was.
Uncle Sam wants you, huh?
Yeah, that was about a year and a half later. But
well, now tell us about your family. You have brothers and sisters?
I have a sister who is deceased.
Okay.
A couple of years ago.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And I am married 56 years. Mm-hmm. And I have 3 sons.
Wonderful, wonderful.
9 grandchildren, 3 great-grandchildren.
Oh my gosh, you are lucky. That's great. Okay, then, so from St. Bonaventure you went to Bacon. Did you have any particular interests as a boy? Hobbies, interests, anything like that?
Well, growing up through the Second World War, I always thought I wanted to be in the Army.
Okay.
And I had a lot of interest in that. In fact, I probably would have joined up if I was old enough.
Sure.
And but I used to love to do model airplanes and all that kind of stuff. You know.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
So yeah, it's.
Well, that and that's interesting. You mentioned that because so many fellas. And a couple of girls that I've interviewed did model airplanes and model ships. And everybody said the same thing. It was kind of a hands-on thing. It was a training. Mm-hmm. It was a discipline that you had to do to make things work.
Yeah, I guess that could be true. Yeah.
It was good stuff, I should say. Well, now, when you went to Roger Bacon there in St. Bernard, what did you do there at high school?
Well, I started out trying to play football.
Okay.
And but things were a little tight at home, and I had to go to work. So I got a part-time job, and I started playing what they call Sunday football.
Oh yeah.
And I played that for 3 years.
Oh, good for you.
And so I managed to do both, and I got to play my football. And
what position did you play?
Oh, I played mostly tackle and guard most of the time. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you were a good athlete, and again, something that was fun to do, that you like to do, and I think we all have done something like that. But through high school, did you belong to any? Well, you said you had to work part-time.
Yeah.
And maybe you didn't have too much leisure time.
No, not a whole lot.
Yeah.
Not a whole lot.
Yeah. And at that period, now of course in high school, for you, World War was over. World War II was over.
It just ended like the year
just
before.
Between the
there
two
was just
wars.
A gap in there, yeah.
Right in there, yeah. Well, as you approached your senior year at Bacon, were you expecting to be drafted, or?
Well, they were still in the draft.
Yeah.
They were still drafting.
Yeah, they were.
And I didn't know. I thought there was a possibility that I would be drafted. So right after that, I was going with my wife at the time, and her brother joined the Navy Reserve. And he talked me into joining the Navy Reserve. So I did join the Navy Reserve.
Good.
And I was in the Navy Reserve for about 18 months when my number came up in the draft. It's kind of a long story there, but
well, it's interesting, and your family would like to hear about this.
I just decided. I had a good friend of mine who was drafted at the same time as I was. We grew up together and went to high school together, And he said, I'm going in the Army. And I says, well, I'm going down and see what's going to happen. So I went down, I asked him, I says, what happens now? You know, I've got my draft notice. And they says, well, you have to sign up for active duty in the Navy, or you can be drafted, and
Take your
you'll
chances, no?
get a discharge from the Navy. So I thought, well, I'm going to go with him. I just says, I'm going to go ahead and be drafted. And that's what I did.
I should say.
So, and I did get my discharge from the Navy.
Now, did you two guys get to stay together?
We did all the way through basic training.
No kidding.
And for some unknown reason, there was 3 of us from Cincinnati down at Fort Riley. And the 2 of us got our orders for Far East Command. And he was left behind for some reason. And he left like 2 weeks after we left. And I hadn't heard from him at all until I got a letter from home and saying, his name was Milt, by the way. And they said, Milt got in Korea. The first night he was in Korea, he got wounded. And they had to send him back to Japan for some operations and that. He was all right, and they sent him back to Korea after.
Oh, they sent him back?
They sent him back after.
Oh, my
but they
God.
gave him a good cushy job when he went back.
Yeah.
So,
Well, you got the Purple Heart, huh?
oh, yeah. Yeah.
I'll be darned.
One day.
Now, you mentioned Fort Riley, Kansas.
Yeah.
Now, that was artillery, wasn't it?
No, that time was infantry.
Oh, it was infantry.
Yeah, they had changed several times over
Okay,
the years.
okay.
It was the 10th Infantry Division
Yeah.
down there. And it was mostly heavy weapons.
Okay.
And that's why I got into a mortar battalion.
Oh, I know what I'm saying. I know before the war, Riley had cavalry.
Cavalry, yes. They still had
Horse
horses down there. They still had horses down there when we were there.
Did they really in the
kept them down
50s?
there, yeah, just for old time's sake.
Sure.
Yeah.
Just maintain
That they always had a 5 or 6 buffalo down there in a pen.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, and they were still there a few years ago. I stopped by there. They still got those buffalo down
No
there.
kidding.
I don't know if it's the same ones or not, but
How about that? Well, that's kind of maintaining the,
I guess
tradition, isn't
yeah,
it?
I guess the buffalo soldiers or something got something to do with
Sure,
that.
sure.
Yeah.
Well, how about basic training? How did you feel about that?
I rather enjoyed it. I had no problem with it whatsoever, especially once we got past the first 8 weeks,
Yeah.
and then we went into 8 weeks of what we called the heavy weapons.
Right.
And that was the heavy machine guns and the mortars, and that was all very interesting. I enjoyed it.
Yeah. Now, was that something that you were really had a good aptitude for, working with weapons?
Well, you know what? I had never hardly fired a weapon before I went in the Army. I was never interested in guns.
Right.
But
But you
all
had the
worked out.
ability to
Well,
take
yeah.
things apart and put it back
Oh,
together
yeah.
again?
We learned how to do that.
Sure.
I never had a problem with
All
that.
right, that's great.
Yeah, you had to learn how to take all of them apart.
What were some of the weapons that you worked on?
Oh, my. Of course, the basic
stuff?
it was your, with the big stuff, the 30 caliber machine gun,
Yeah.
50 caliber machine gun, the recoilless rifles, the big one, 75 recoilless. And then from there we went to the 81 millimeter mortar. And then we went to the big one, the 4.2 mortar. And that's what I wound up in Korea with a
Okay.
4.2 mortar battalion.
Now, several fellows that we've interviewed talk about the Garand.
Yeah.
Did you have the Garand?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that
So
the
they used
basic
that-
rifle.
That
yeah.
was the basic through?
Yeah,
I see.
that was your basic rifle.
Okay,
And that was the first 8 weeks. Everybody had to
Yeah.
fire the M1.
sure,
And then, of course, we had to learn how to fire the carbine.
sure. And
Or-
you had-
and a 45 pistol. We also
Oh,
had
yeah,
to do that.
sidearms,
Those are
everything.
the 3 basic
Sure.
weapons for basic.
and a lot of marching and drilling
Oh, yes. Every day.
out there on the grinder.
Yeah. Did a lot of it down there.
Yeah, I should say. Well, now Kansas, that was kind of a different situation for a boy from Ohio.
Yeah, I guess flat
Kind of
country.
flat and
Flat. Although we used to cross the road there from Fort Riley, was on the base was on one side of the road. You cross the road and then you went up into the hills. There was some pretty good hills up there,
good hills.
and that's where all the firing ranges were.
I
and
see.
and the camp was down below on the river. Now, the last time I was down there, The old camp where we were is all gone. They moved everything up on the hill, the high ground, because of a flood they had down there in the 60s.
Sure.
So they got rid of
That's right.
the old base.
Now, did you, while you were there, did you camp out?
Yes, that was part of the training.
That's part of the training.
You had what you call bivouac. That was
Bivouac.
for two
Sure.
weeks. You had to
Up
go out for
tents
2 weeks. Yep, went up in the hills for 2 weeks. And that's where you're, and you did combat situations, while
Sure.
you were on there. So.
And you really learned how to get along with other people, too.
That's right, yeah.
Because you were meeting people you'd never laid
Oh,
eyes
yeah,
on
yeah.
before.
Oh, yeah, everybody was strangers, like I say, except my two
Yep.
friends that I went with.
Yeah, I was
That's
lucky
it.
that you
Yep.
had them.
Yeah. Yeah, there's no, out of the whole company, I think there's only 3 from Cincinnati.
How about that?
Yeah.
Well, so you had your basic 8 weeks, and then your field training, and then what happened after that?
Actually, after that, I got my leave. I got a 7-day leave, and I was to report back to Fort Riley for leadership school.
Mm-hmm.
Got back to Fort Riley after 7 days, went to leadership school, and my buddy went with me. The 2 of us,
How about
all 3
that?
of us got to go.
That's great.
And we were there, I would say maybe a week, and they called us out and they said, your orders have been changed, that you're now assigned to the Far East Command. Well, we found out it was because of our MOSs and because of the heavy weapon training.
Uh-huh.
And
They needed you.
They needed us. And I didn't know this at the time, but when I got over to Korea, I got into this heavy mortar battalion, and I was the only one actually that went into a mortar battalion. One of them was stationed in Japan when he got there, and well, I was too, really. And they said if anybody wanted to volunteer to go to Korea, they could, and I did. I volunteered to go, and my other buddy, he got there 2 weeks later, and then he went into the 7th Division as a machine gunner. He was still in heavy weapons, but. When I got there, even with all the training I had in mortars, I was called up by the company commander after I'd been there for 3 or 4 days. And he says, we're going to pull you out of the squad. He says, you're going to go down and take charge of the communications section, be the commo chief. And I kind of looked at him, I says, I don't have any training in communications. He says, don't worry about that. He says, you'll learn. He says, you got leadership. He says, you
Sure,
can handle the men. And he says, you finished leadership school. And I looked at him, I says, I didn't finish. And he said, it's here. He says that you got credit for finishing leadership school. I said, well, okay, I finished leadership school.
You'll take that?
I took that. So I went down and took charge of the commo section. And luckily there was a gentleman there that was ready to go home in about 2 weeks. And he took me as a wing, and he was showing me the ropes,
Oh boy, that was good.
And I found out, I thought at first that was going to be a better job, and I found out it was a rougher job than the gun squad, because we were always out climbing the hills and on the front line. At the OPs, we had spent time up there, quite a bit of time at the OPs. So,
oh my gosh. It must have been terrible over there. It reminds me, I'm interrupting here a little bit, but have you seen the Korea Memorial in Washington,
oh,
D.C.?
yes. Yeah, several times.
And those figures,
Yeah.
I tell you, that is the most impressive.
I know, everybody says the same thing, and I was
you
really
can see
impressed.
the radio guy there,
Yeah.
huddled under his foul weather gear. And
There's one of everything there. There's an Air Force, there's a Navy, Corpsman, and
oh, that is so impressive. Your your experience in the communications. Now, what kind of equipment did you have? Radio and so forth.
we had World War II equipment.
Yeah.
The same thing. The old
Figures.
crank telephones,
Yeah.
And we had, I forget what number it was now. They used to call it an Angry 9. It was an ANG 9, I think, and they called it an Angry 9.
Yeah.
It was a pretty good sized radio. And it just wasn't, you just couldn't carry the thing around. You could mount it on a Jeep, but we just didn't use Jeeps that much,
You were
So
foot soldiers.
the only time we ever used Jeeps was when we move from position to position.
Yeah.
But then they came out with a smaller radio, and I forget what that, you could carry that. But radios over there in Korea were not very good at all because of the hills.
Oh, sure.
You
That's
just,
right, of
they just
course.
didn't have the range.
Terrible
So
transmission.
it was mostly all landline.
Yeah.
And of course, they were just constantly getting knocked out by shrapnel all the time.
Yeah.
So that was just every day, and almost 24 hours a day you were maintaining lines between the company and the OPs.
Okay, now what time of the year was it when you first got into
I
Korea?
first got over there the winter,
It was in the winter.
last part of January.
Oh my gosh.
And yeah, it was pretty cold. And it stayed cold up until into March. March it started breaking a little bit. Well, just about like it does here.
Yeah.
And but we had, I can remember the first March over there was, we got about a foot of snow. And the day before we pulled out, we had us pulling out of that position. And when I got there, it was real kind of a nice position because we had bunkers. They had bunkers there, sandbag bunkers. We had a stove in there, you know. And I thought, well, gee, this isn't too bad, you know. But after about a month, we're out of there. I never saw a bunker again after that. We were digging holes and sleeping in holes. But
your living conditions in the wintertime there. A lot of mud.
Mud, yes. As soon as it started thawing, oh, mud was terrible. And you know, a lot of people associate the cold weather with Korea.
Yes.
But believe me, in the summertime, in July and August,
Plenty hot.
it was hot. You were talking 100 degrees. It was very, very hot.
Well, you know, you're talking about Korea, the 39th parallel,
Yeah.
which divides the peninsula. That's farther south than we are.
Yeah,
We're about the 40th.
yeah.
How about that?
But yeah, it was very warm, very humid.
Yeah.
Then you had your monsoon season move in.
Oh, brother.
That came in, let's see, latter part of June. That would hit you. And you'd have maybe a week or two of solid rain.
Wow.
And then it would be all muddy again, all over again.
Now, how about your personal equipment, boots, clothing, and so forth?
Same as World War II.
Adequate?
Yeah, it was adequate.
Yeah.
Yeah. I always thought it was
A lot of
adequate.
guys had trouble with their shoes, you know.
Yeah, we had the combat boots, you know. Probably some of them were newer than they had in World War II, but basically they were the same.
So it was,
And then the fatigues, you know, the same fatigues.
Right.
Wintertime, you wore the old OD uniform,
yeah.
the wool pants and the wool
Heavy.
shirts. Yeah.
Well, you know, it's just fascinating to talk to you about the Korea experience. So here you are now. Now we're talking what? Late winter, early spring, 51?
53.
53, 1953, okay. How did you get over there, by the way?
On a boat.
Big transport or?
No, it was a small, what they call Liberty ship.
Oh, yeah, sure.
It was a World War II transport.
Yep,
And I think we took us, I don't know, 12 days or something
not bad.
to get to Japan.
Yeah,
And then from Japan, why they issued your combat gear there,
right,
and you got your assignments,
yeah.
and they put you back on a boat, took you down to Korea.
Now, did you go directly across, or did you stop at Pearl Harbor?
No,
or
straight across.
straight across.
Yeah, went to Yokohama.
How about
We
that?
left Seattle, Washington,
Yeah.
and
Well, your first impression upon aboard the ship and going into Japan and this huge, huge harbor, this amazing place, what was your first impression?
in Korea.
No, in Japan.
Oh, Japan.
Before you went to Korea. Foreign land, something you'd never seen before.
Yeah, and you know, of course they herd you off that boat or ship, and they marched us right to a train.
Oh, they did.
And from the train, from the shipyard there, they took us by train into Camp Drake. And I don't know, we're probably on that train for, it seemed like forever, but I think it was about an hour. And you didn't get to see too much because that train was moving pretty fast. And yeah, it was kind of interesting, you know, just seeing what you could see.
Sure, different.
Now going into Korea was a little different.
I'll bet. Tell us about that.
When we got to Korea, we landed, we were going into Incheon, which was taken a couple of years before. And there they had the tide went out. You had to get in there and out within a certain time. So when they're unloading that ship, they don't have enough time to get everybody in there and out before that tide goes out. So they anchored about, maybe a mile out, and we went in on landing barges.
Oh, yeah.
And they took you in that way. And I always say, I can remember when I looked up there, I said, everything looked gray. You know, it was. The hills were all gray. It's cloudy that day, and the water looked gray. The ships were gray. I said, everything is gray. It was just like a black and white movie, you know. And then from there, they put us on a train, and then that's
at Incheon.
At Incheon, we all got on trains, and they took you so far up on a train, and then they dumped us in another place. And they said, okay, here's where your companies or your division or whatever's going to pick you up. Well, I was assigned to a battalion. I was assigned to 461st Infantry Battalion. So we waited there until the truck came down, in which was just a short time, and they put us on a truck, and they took us up to the front line. And I can remember it was dead of night when we got up there. It seems like every time you got someplace, it was in dead of night.
Dark and gray.
Yeah, dark and gray. So, and I looked up, and all I could see was tracers going out. And I thought, well, here it is.
Here it is. This is it.
This is it. It was that way from now until the ceasefire. But yeah, it's quite an experience. It really was.
I should say. How long were you up there at the front lines?
Actually, I was in combat 6 months, a little over 6 months.
Wow.
Yeah. And we never left the front line in that 6 months.
Never did.
Our whole battalion went over there in 1950, and the whole battalion, the 3 years that they were there, was always on the front line. Never went back.
Really?
Never went back in reserve.
Now this was all communication company.
No, this was a mortar battalion.
Oh, this was the Mortar Battalion.
Mortar battalion. I was in communications in the mortar battalion.
In the Mortar. I got you.
And yeah, it's we never because we always went. We were assigned. We were never assigned to a one unit. We wherever things were the worst, that's where they sent our battalion.
Yeah.
In fact, we had 3 companies of mortars, and that was total 36 mortars. And
describe a mortar.
Well, basically it's just a tube with a base plate. And
how big a diameter?
well, a 4.2 was 4.2 inches.
Okay.
And that's what it was. And the shell was a 25-pound shell. And you drop the shell down the tube, and I was telling Dennis before there that at the end of the shell it's like a shotgun shell almost.
Okay, it had a point in there.
And the tube has got a firing pin inside.
Firing pin.
And when you drop that down there, you hit charges on the outside of this the shell that you insert in there. And depending on how far you want that shell to go is how many charges you put on it. And as soon as that shell strike that pin, it would set off the charges on the shell, and then it would send it out the tube. There it went. Yeah.
Wow. That was an effective weapon too, wasn't
Yes,
it?
sir. And it was a perfect weapon for Korea. It really was.
Yeah.
Because of the hills.
Close in.
You could just lob them things right over a hill. You could take one side of the hill, drop it right up on the other side. So that's why we were so popular over there, I guess.
Oh, yeah.
Because now the divisions all they'd have a company of 4.2 mortars, but we had a whole battalion. So that's why they used us, and they just sent us here and there. Wherever things are worse, that's where we went.
You guys were experts.
Yeah. And they would even split up our battalion sometimes. Sometimes one company would be here and one would be there. And very seldom we were all together at one time. We weren't far, but we'd have different assignments.
Sure.
And they'd be different places.
Sure, but they knew how to depend on you and where you were needed. One thing I've always been interested in is aviation in the Korea War. Did you see MiGs and enemy planes and things like that?
Oh yeah. Yeah, the Air Force played a big part in that war. Listen, we couldn't do without them.
I know it.
I mean, boy, they'd soften up a place, before we get there. And
Right.
Napalm, they drop a lot of napalm over there. A lot of napalm.
Boy, that was
That was wicked stuff.
wasn't it?
Yeah. But yeah,
Very effective.
we in fact we were involved one day. My friend and I were up on the OP, and we saw this. It was a Navy jet, and we could tell. We said he's in trouble, and all of a sudden we could see flames, and he bailed out.
Oh.
And we watched him. He was going down. We thought he's going to be in a bad spot because he's all by himself, and he was going down in this valley. And we thought we'd go down and see if we could rescue him. And then, but we went to the OP, and they said, yeah, they saw him too. He says, we'll go down and we'll get him out of there. He said, no, you won't. He says, because he said, we already contacted the pilot somehow or other, I guess on the radio or whatever. He said they got help on the way. They got a helicopter on the way to him.
Oh.
And he says as soon as he's out of there, they're going to start shelling that area.
Wow.
So that's what they did. They sent a That's one of they sent the helicopters we had over there was all the old bubble type, for medical reasons. But in a case like that, they would do it for a rescue.
Mm-hmm.
They could pick him up as a rescue.
Oh, that's that's a wonderful story. I should say. Well, thankfully that they got him out of there okay.
As far as I know, he was all right.
I know. Right. Did you were you under enemy aircraft fire, bombardment, or anything dropping bombs and so forth?
No. At that time, their Air Force was pretty well wiped out.
Yeah.
Pretty well wiped out.
Now, your main opposition, the people you were fighting, were they Chinese?
Chinese.
No
Yeah.
kidding.
Yeah. The North Korean army they were beat several years before that.
Yeah.
Now, the Chinese, I understand, would take some of the North Koreans and put them in their divisions or whatever. But mostly it was all Chinese.
Right.
Yeah. Chinese were running all the prison camps.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And you saw them. Did you see the enemy? Did
Oh,
you
yeah.
see them?
Oh, yeah.
You could see them out there
Oh, yeah.
firing away at you and
Oh,
all
yeah.
that sort of thing?
Yeah.
My gosh.
Oh, yeah. They were.
Were you wounded or anything?
I was not wounded.
Boy,
I don't know how I escaped.
you were blessed, weren't you?
Our battalion was, I would say the rate of wounded was, I'm going to take a rough guess and say at least 30% was
No
wounded.
kidding.
Yeah,
That's high.
yeah.
That's very
We had a lot of captured too.
Did you really?
Yeah.
Oh,
I had one of my men in my squad was captured, and
oh.
2 months before the war ended, he was captured, and he never made it home. He died before he got home.
Oh,
Yeah.
gosh.
And I've been trying to find out for the last year where in the heck he's been buried. I've got a woman up there in one of the government offices that they don't handle battlefield deaths, but they handle other casualties, which he come under. They can't find him.
I'll be darned.
And I said, well, could he be buried in Korea? She said, it's a possibility.
So his family never
I can't find
got
his
to know
family.
anything about him?
I wrote, I haven't got an answer back yet.
Uh-huh.
I just did this.
Yeah. Good for you.
Because
That's
I
wonderful.
couldn't find anybody of his family, but I wrote the courthouse in, I can't remember the county, I can't pronounce the county's name. It's Okatiba or something. It's like an Indian name. And that's
Oklahoma?
where he was listed as from. No city, just the county.
I'll be darned.
So I wrote to that county, the courthouse,
Good for you.
and to see if there's any
Sure.
living relatives.
Sure.
That's my only hope now. Because this girl in Washington said, I'll get back to you. And she said, as soon as I find out something.
Yeah.
But so far, I haven't heard anything. This is about a week ago.
How about
But,
that? Well, good for you. I hope that would be wonderful, wouldn't it?
The gentleman that he was with, it was a lieutenant. I met up with him in 1996. He came to one of our reunions. And he was with him that day. He was the officer in charge of the OP. There was 4 of them in there all together. And they all got out okay except him. He was very, very sick when they got him out. That's what I understand.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if he was wounded too. I don't know. but we think that he might have died of hemorrhagic fever.
Oh, my.
So,
Gee.
but we know that he didn't get home alive. We do.
Right.
I don't know if he died in Korea on the ship or after he got home.
Well,
Yeah.
now, Bob, there you are over there halfway around the world from home and everything. You left your sweetheart here.
I had a wife. I was married.
Oh, you were married when you went?
I got married right before I went in the Army.
Oh, you did?
Yeah,
Oh.
about 2 months before I went in.
Oh, my gosh.
That's what my wife wanted.
Woo.
She put up a big wedding. She got it all together, and her
How
and her
about
father.
that?
Yeah, that's what
You're
she
married here in your home church and everything?
Yeah.
How about that? Oh, that's a great story. So there you were, far, far away. What about the mail situation, service mail and that sort of thing?
It was pretty good.
Uh-huh.
It was about 7 days old when we got it.
Yeah.
About 7 days.
V-mail, did you have V-mail? I
No,
guess
it
that
was
was
air
just-
mail.
Yeah.
There's no V.
Yeah, V-mail.
But
That was a World War II thing.
yeah,
Right.
of course, we had free postage,
Sure.
same
Oh,
as
yeah.
World War
Right.
II. But it took about 7 days.
How about censorship when you wrote your letters? Was
You
there
know,
any censoring?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I don't think they do.
It was a little bit different then, I
Yeah.
think, because
Yeah.
you were on land and so
Yeah.
forth, so on. Well, you talk about reunions and that sort of thing. Tell us, what was how do you categorize it, as a regimental reunion or a
Battalion.
battalion
Yeah.
reunion?
We call it the Red Dragon
The
Association.
Red Dragon.
Yeah, because our patch had a red dragon.
Oh,
on it.
yeah.
So
Now,
we
what
just
was the
called
number?
461st. It
461.
originally was the 2nd Chemical Mortar Battalion.
I see.
For years, it was a Chemical Mortar Battalion.
Okay.
Right before I got to the battalion, they changed it to the infantry
Mm-hmm.
because they said that's where it belongs and it's always belonged in the infantry.
right.
So they made it infantry from that on.
I see.
And the battalion only lasted until, they tell me that in 1955, it was disbanded, and that was the last of the mortar battalions.
I'll be
There
down
was never one again.
there. Isn't that
They
something?
just put it right in with all their
Yeah.
other division. Well, they changed the whole setup of the Army,
Yeah.
recent years.
Right.
Now there's brigades and whatever. I
Right.
don't know. I don't know what the makeup is anymore.
Now, you talk about, connections with people and your old outfit and so forth. Do you have frequent reunions anymore?
Every year.
Every year?
Every year we have one.
Golly, different places around the
Yep,
country?
yeah.
And have you gone to most of them?
I've been going since 1996.
Good for you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's when I first found out about it.
yeah, right.
And I've been going ever since.
Right, right.
In fact, they even made me vice president of the association. So
That's great. That's great.
that's because nobody else wanted it, I guess.
No, there again, they recognize your leadership.
But no, it's a lot of fun. I really enjoy it.
It is fun.
Yeah.
It's,
And the best part of it is this year, about 2 years ago, I located one of my best friends that I searched that was in my squad.
Okay.
And he was one of my best wiremen, and whenever I had to go, I always picked him to go. So we were always together. Unfortunately, when he rotated home several months before I did, he was on his second tour in Korea. He had volunteered to come back. I was gone out on wire patrol, and when I got back, they said, Kegel's gone. That was his name. And I said, what do you mean he's gone? He said, they come up, they said he's got his points and he's rotating home. And he was gone. And I didn't even get to say goodbye to the guy. And for years and years, I thought about that guy. I thought about it. Darn, I wish I could get a hold of him. And, but I never knew his first name. Because we didn't use first names.
No, it was always
Everybody
last.
called you by your last name.
Yep, right.
And I called him Kegel. He called me Mac.
Mm-hmm.
And so one day I sent to St. Louis and got rosters. And here the roster came. And I looked through it, and here he was on there, and his name was D-E-E. I said, I'd never dreamed that was his name.
How about that?
So I got on a computer and just put it in the white pages, what they call the white pages. I don't know if you're familiar with that or not. Put his name in there. and never knew where he was from. Put his name in there. By God, I got a hit back on a decagle out in Albuquerque, New Mexico.
For heaven's sake.
And I thought, well, I said, Albuquerque don't sound right. I said, I'm going to write this guy and see if he's it. So I wrote him a letter, and about 3 days later, the phone rang, and here he's on the phone. and I said, what in the world are you doing in Albuquerque? I knew he was from the Midwest someplace. Yep. He said, well, he was stationed at Fort Hood, Texas, and he had met a Mexican girl who lived in San Antonio. And they got married, and then they moved to Albuquerque, and he got out of the Army. He spent 12 years and he got out. But so we've been talking back. I call him about every 3 months. Well, he'll call me or I'll call him.
That's nice.
So he called me just here the other month, and he says, I'm going to see you. He said, this year, he said, I'm going to come to the reunion.
Good.
So I said, boy, that's great. You know,
Isn't that great?
I'm looking forward to that.
Oh, yeah.
I'm really looking forward to that.
Lots of pictures and reminiscences and everything. Oh, that's wonderful, Bob. Yeah, that it means so much because you were so close.
Yeah.
So close.
And the guy that was captured that I was talking about, that was one of his very best friends. He never knew what happened to him, not until I told him.
Oh my
he says,
gosh.
"You're kidding." He said, I just figured he got out of prison camp and made it home. I said, no, he never made it home.
I'll be darned. Oh, well, you know that the camaraderie and the loyalty and the depending upon each other meant so much.
Yeah, and you know, even after the war, there's still that. When you go to reunions, it's still there. You know?
You never lose it.
You never lose it.
Never.
That's why I enjoy him so much, I think.
Well, that's great. Well, good for you. So many people have really drifted away, you know, with no connections whatsoever.
Right.
And that's kind of sad. Well, now listen. Here we are. You're still up there. You're up there in those Korean hills before you got your orders to go home. How many points did you have to get before?
36.
36.
Yeah.
Boy, we didn't have to have that many in World War II, as I remember.
I thought it was the same.
Maybe it was. Maybe it was. But anyway, you went up through the ranks: private first class, corporal, buck sergeant.
I was ready to make sergeant when I come home.
Okay.
I never got that far, but I was ready to.
You were ready.
I was ready for it.
They should have given you that.
Yep. Oh yes, I was. Well, we had so many sergeants in our battalion from World War II that came in.
Oh, that's right.
That they could only have so many, and we couldn't make the rank because of them.
Just no room for you. Right. Right.
In fact, we had one sergeant they sent down to me, and they said, we have no place to put him. They said, we're going to make him your assistant.
Oh my God.
He's a sergeant. And he says, he'll just be kind of in charge of the whole squad. I said, okay, whatever. He didn't last long, though. That wasn't for him. I think he transferred out and went to special services or something. Which wasn't, that was in the entertainment field.
Oh, yes.
I don't know what entertainment he was.
Speaking of that, did you have the opportunity to see USO shows and things like that?
I saw one.
Oh, you did?
I saw one.
Tell us about that.
I don't know if I know you would remember Dick Cantina.
Oh, yeah.
The accordion player?
Yep.
That's who I saw.
No kidding.
That was the show that I saw.
He was the show.
Yeah. I wasn't that crazy about him, but we just happened to be passing by this place, and they stopped. We were on a move someplace, and they said, well, we got time, let's go watch the show. And here it was him. You know, no women or anything, just Catino and his accordion.
A solo act.
Yeah. The only other time when I first got over there, they had one back in our battalion rear, and they had a whole show. They had singers and
dancers
women,
and
dancers, all. And I went back, and my buddy, this Kegel, we went back, watched the show, and before it even got started, the MC come out, and he says, we have an announcement to make. He said, so hold on. He says, the battalion commanders coming out. So he says the following people report back to their companies. He says Charlie Company, which I was in. He says if you're on the advance party, he says get back to your company. And I was part of the advance party. So we knew then that's when we pulled out of this area. We had to go back, and then we hooked up with our platoon leader, and then we took off to wherever the new area was going to be. We were the first ones into this area to check it out before the rest of the battalion company got there.
So you were an advanced force.
Yeah. Our combo squad was, or part of it, was always on the advanced party.
Gosh.
And the Fire Direction Center was part of it also. They used to go too. Fire Direction Center and the combo section. Those were the only ones.
I'll be darned. So you didn't get to see the show?
Didn't get to see it. No, didn't get to see it.
Priorities.
And then I think it was after the ceasefire, I think I got to see a movie.
Mm-hmm.
There was a movie. We sat out in the field and watched the movie.
Yeah, right. Well, you remember, of course, the television series MASH.
Oh, yeah.
And did any of that relate to you at all?
Not really.
Not really.
That.
It was so funny and
Yeah,
everything,
it was just
of course,
more
but
comedy. I'm sure some of it might have been,
some of the medic stuff,
yeah,
I guess.
might have been true.
But that was an amazing. That was an amazing series, and of course they had such a cast of characters in that,
The only thing that was real to me, they were as MASH units that were.
Yep.
So, and they did do a good job. There's no doubt about it. They were great.
That is what I understand, and you mentioned earlier about the early helicopters and what they evac and medic supply and so forth, and you saw those things.
Oh yeah, many times. Yeah. But they say that it was a lot better than World War II what they were doing, and of course when Vietnam come along, they got better again, and now they're even better than they were then. So they're improving all the time.
They're amazing now.
But the Korean War was kind of the start of the real MASH units.
Sure, and of course it gained experience from World War II. And speaking of that and the high tech that we have today, have you seen that PBS series of the Carrier on Channel 48?
Yes, I did. Yeah, that was great.
Blows my mind.
Yeah.
Those big ships with 6,000 people aboard.
It's hard to believe.
4.5 acres of flight deck.
It's like a city. I always thought those were really great.
Right. Okay. Now let's see. You've been over there about 6 months.
In combat, yes.
In combat.
Yeah.
And what was the next expectation, and what was your next move?
After combat, of course, the ceasefire came up.
Okay.
And
now we're talking 53.
That's 53.
Okay.
And we left the front line for about 2 weeks. They gave us a break. They says, you guys are been through a lot, 6 months. Absolutely. They went back and they called this place Happy Valley. It was great. It was like a resort to us. I mean, we had big squad tents, and there was a stream that ran through there, and you could go down there and jump in that stream, and wash up, clean up. Got good food. And it lasted about 2 weeks. Then we loaded up and went back up to the front line.
Oh, you did?
And just almost in the same position where we left.
Now this was after the ceasefire?
After the ceasefire, yeah.
Why did they put you back?
Well, they maintained the front line for all these years, still today yet.
That's right. We're still paying for it, aren't we?
So we had to be ready. So that's what we went back up for, and you just stayed in training until I went home, and I went home in December.
Now, after the ceasefire, did you have any contact with the North Koreans?
No.
But you were on the DMZ, weren't you?
Yeah.
Huh.
There was at that time, there was about a mile buffer zone.
Oh, I see.
With like no man's land in between. So nobody could go in there. I think it was a group of soldiers from India Had a big tent out in the field in front of us. You could see it, big white tent. And they were kind of just to watch, I guess, for nobody get into that zone. And I guess they had these all along the DMZ, I don't know. 'Cause I think that's what do they say, 100 and some miles long? I don't know.
Yeah. Well, you know, the propaganda, of course, was that this was a United Nations operation, quote unquote.
Yeah.
So much for that. But there were other
yes.
companies,
Yes.
countries there. Did you come in contact with any?
Some.
The Turks and Indians?
Not the Turks, British.
British?
We did. And the Greeks. I'm trying to think. And a lot of, we supported a lot of Korean divisions.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, because they never had the mortars and that like we did. So we spent a lot of time with them.
Sure. They depended upon your weaponry.
Yeah. But yeah, we spent some time with the British. Other than the United States, the British had probably the most troops in there. United States had a good 75% of the troops.
Oh, yeah.
And then the rest of them were all small units.
Sure.
A lot of them weren't even combat units. They were just support units and
Very small.
medical units.
Yeah.
A lot of engineers. But the British they were up on the line, and so were the Turks.
Right.
They're combat troops.
Yeah, they were good too, I understand.
Turks were very good.
Well, that is so interesting and so different from, really different from World War II, and the fact that you were in contact with other nations like that.
Yeah.
What was your prospect then at this time? You said you were there after the ceasefire for how long?
For, let's see, from July to December.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
About 6 months. And that was just a kind of a holding pattern.
That's all it was, yes.
You were just on the watch.
Yep.
Did that get boring?
At times. At times you wish there was more to do.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Right.
And you can only train so much, you know.
That's right.
Yeah.
And you work on your equipment, and
Yeah, that's
once
about
you
it.
got it ready, that was it.
Yeah. Yeah.
How about that? What about the accommodations there?
They were pretty good after the ceasefire. For a while we were living in pup tents up there, but then they brought in big squad tents, and each squad had their own tent. And well, I shouldn't say everybody did. Some of the gun squads, they had what they called hex tents, smaller ones. But our commo section, we had a big squad tent, and that was nice. A wooden floor, you know, and had a stove. We had 2 stoves in there, in fact. Pretty nice, pretty nice. Compared to what we had, it was nice.
Right,
it wasn't home, but it was nice.
I'll say. Did you ever have any experience with vermin or insects or anything like that?
Oh, there was all kinds.
Really?
Mosquitoes.
Tell us about
summertime. Yeah, mosquitoes that big.
No kidding.
Oh yeah, we had to take
Real bloodsuckers.
quinine to keep from getting malaria.
Sure, malaria.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah.
I forgot about it. Yeah.
Yeah, they used to get it. I think it was once a week. You had to take a big old pill.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's plenty of rats over there. Snakes. They had everything. But
The wilderness.
yeah.
Oh gosh. Well, you know, you've got such a great story. I hope you've written down some of your memories and so forth.
Working on it.
Yeah, I know, we all are. But,
Just speaking of that, a couple of years ago, and it's supposed to be out this year, a gentleman who comes to our reunion, he was not in our battalion. His father was in World War II in the same battalion. And he wrote a book about World War II. It's a wonderful book. And I read it, and there was so much likeness of what was going on there and in Korea. I said it was almost, you could write the same thing about Korea. And he started now, he's got a book he's writing about Korea. and I did an interview with him.
Oh, good.
So he's going to have something in there. And in fact, he sent me a copy a year ago to go through it and make sure, and I had to make some changes in there, whatever he didn't have right. And now the book is supposed to be out this year by the time we get to our reunion.
Oh, good.
So I'm looking forward to seeing that book now.
That's great. Where's your reunion going to be?
This year it's going to be in Branson, Missouri.
Branson.
Yeah.
You've been there before?
Yes. Yeah, we were there in 2003, and it was one of the biggest reunions we had. And we thought maybe it was the location. So we decided, well, let's go back and see if it's as good as it was then.
Sure.
Because it's kind of been dropping off, you know. Of course, it's going to do that,
Oh, yeah.
you know, as we get older, you know.
Can't stop that.
Yeah.
I know it.
So we're going to see how it works out.
Oh, good, good.
There was two of them that were very, very good. It was Colorado and Branson. I thought, well, maybe it's because it's more
You
centralized.
like Branson, did you?
Yeah, it's all right. You know, it's
Kind
not
of
really.
hokey, isn't it?
Yeah.
I know. Well, that, you know, here again, we're talking about connections and keeping your, you know, your memories alive with old friends and so forth. And you're terrific. I think it's just wonderful what you're doing. You're dedicated to trying to not only maintain something, but maybe revive something that you've lost touch with.
Right.
That's great. How many people will you get at a reunion?
Oh, last year was one of our worst ones. I think we had about 40 men there. And, but we've had as high as over, you know, in the hundreds.
Right.
In the last few years, it's really been down. And we've lost a lot of them. I know we've lost a lot of them.
Oh, yes. Oh, my goodness, yes, I should say. Well, you know, one of the ironies of the Korea War is that so many people don't know anything about it.
That's true.
They call it the Forgotten War.
Yeah.
It was wedged in there between the big one and Vietnam, which got so much publicity and so much coverage and everything. And Korea was just... Now, Truman was president.
He was president. And then Eisenhower came in.
Yep.
Yep.
Right. And Eisenhower was pretty effective in pulling that end.
He got that ceasefire, yes.
Yep.
He was very instrumental in that.
I should say.
Yeah.
Did you see any big cats over there, or any top commanders or anything like that?
The only one that I had really any contact with was General Walker.
Oh, Walker, yeah.
Yeah, he was
He was famous.
Yeah, he was in command of the 8th Army
8th Army.
in 53. He was,
Right.
and that's a little story in itself.
Good, let's have it.
He came into our area, and we were with a Korean attachment, and we were giving them fire support, and my company commander says, General Walker wants to go up to the OP and call a fire mission. And he says, I want you and this other gentleman who in my squad, he says, to take him up there. Or it was his driver, his driver. And he says, you take him up to the OP. And I says, I looked at him and I said, General Walker's going to go up to the OP? And he
Wow.
says, yes. And I says, okay. He
That's
said he
kinda-
wants to call a fire mission. So we went over to this Korean division where he was. He didn't even come to ours. He came over to the Republic of Korea. And they had a trailer set up like a little, almost like a little...
Construction shack
yeah,
or
something like that. And
Had wheels
this
on it?
Korean general that was there, he had his home was in there. That's where
Oh,
he
I
stayed.
see.
And they were going to have. He said, "Well, we're going to eat first." He said, "We're going to eat, and then we're going to go up." They didn't invite us to eat, but they were going to eat. So we said, "Well, we got to eat too," you know. So we called over on the radio, and we says, "How about sending some chow over here?" You know, and they said, "Okay." They get the cooks to run some over to us. So we sat outside and ate, and So about an hour later, well, he comes out and he said, well, we're not going up to the OP. And he said, I'm going to call a fire mission from down here. And I thought, no, you can't do that. You got to see what you're going to be firing at.
Got it.
And so we said, okay, then you don't need us. And he says, no, you can go back to your company. So we went back, and he didn't get up to the OP.
So it was called off.
I don't think he intended on going in the first place.
You didn't want it. Now, when you say OP, observation post?
Observation post, yeah.
Yeah. Well, Bob, that sounds fairly familiar.
Yeah.
Top brass and so forth. Quickly now, we're gonna bring you back home, and where did you disembark? San Francisco?
Seattle. No, Seattle.
Seattle.
Yeah,
Oh, you
Fort
came back to
Lewis. Yeah.
So you came around and.
I
around
got
the
back in Seattle. It was in January.
Mm-hmm.
And
Lots of rain.
yeah, it always rained
All the
Seattle.
roads in Seattle.
And the first thing I did, I head for a telephone, call home, and it says, I'm on my way,
Oh, boy.
And then, but I didn't, I said, I'll have to call you back. I don't know what the situation is.
Yeah.
All I know is I'm here.
Right.
And so I thought maybe I could get a flight out of there, but no, your orders are you're going to go to Fort Sheridan, Illinois. And they put us on a troop train. So we went cross country 3 days on a troop train to get to Seattle or to Chicago.
After all that.
And yeah, I thought, what is this? So we got to Fort Sheridan, and it's all they did was hand us our orders and say, okay, now you can go home for 30-day leave.
Oh, my God.
And here I am sitting in Chicago. I didn't hardly have any money in my pocket, and I didn't know how I was going to get home. I know I didn't have enough money for airfare.
Yeah.
And I didn't even know how to get to the airport. So luckily there was a guy that was on the same train as we were, and we kind of talked to him. And he was a master sergeant. He said, I'm going to have a car sitting at Fort Sheridan. He says, when we get there, he said, I take you down to the train station. He said, I'll be going right near there. He said, I'll drop you off. I said, oh, good. Well, good. I'll jump on a train and get on. So he dropped us off at one of the train stations. I went in to buy a ticket, told him where I wanted to go. They said, we don't have a train going to Cincinnati. I said, you got to be kidding me.
Man,
I said, I says, I didn't think I was ever going to get home.
You were hexed.
So I said, where do I have to go? And he told me, I don't know what the name of the station was.
Yeah.
So I said, I'm going to get a cab and just take it on over there. So I did, and I got a ticket home.
Good for
And
you.
God, I think it took us, I don't know how long on a train to get from Chicago to Cincinnati.
So you came in an old Union terminal here.
Yep.
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
And your family came down to greet you?
Yep, they came down to greet us.
Oh, my
Or
gosh.
me, I should say.
That
I was
was-
the only one on the train from Cincinnati.
Really?
Yeah,
That'll be nice.
that was it. That was it.
Well, Bob, that's just wonderful. Now, you've had a nice family. I think we got about a minute left. Tell us quickly about your post-war career.
Well, believe it or not, before I went into the service, naturally nobody wanted to hire me because they knew I was going to be drafted.
Sure.
And so I got a job with this trucking company in the office. I was just doing some billing and some filing. And so when I came back, I knew all the people there. I worked there for a little over a year, and I went down to see him, and my old boss was there, and he says, are you coming back to work? And I said, well, I don't know. I said, this ain't enough for me. I said, I got to find something better, more, pays more. Wait a minute. And he says, you're not going to go back in the same job you were. He says, you're going to be in a better job.
Good.
He said, you're going to work in the rate department.
Sure.
And I thought for a minute, I said, well, it's not too bad, So I did. I went back to work. I thought, I'll try it out. So I went to work for him. And I worked for that company for 10 years and up the ladder, and then I got into supervision. And then I left that company and went to another company, and I was an operations supervisor there for 26 years.
No kidding.
And I retired out of the trucking business.
How about that?
So
How about that?
that's where I stayed.
You have your family here in town?
All my boys are in town.
Oh, boy.
Well, one lives in Bright, Indiana, but that's
Well,
the same.
that's
the same.
close
Yeah.
enough.
In fact, see more of him than we do.
Well,
yeah.
you, honestly, Bob, it's just a wonderful story. And your experience and your dedication and devotion and everything really comes to the fore here. It's been a great pleasure to meet you,
Well,
to have the opportunity to really get to know Bob McGeorge,
That's-
and I know that your family's going to love having this DVD and seeing the old man and hearing the stories.
I hope so.
That's just great.
Okay.
Thank you a lot.
Well, thank you.